Hello guys, welcome back. In this video, let us learn and solve one real-time interesting problem. Let's say I'm working under government. Now, government is conducting a survey to identify which area they want to develop at first. So for that, they're conducting a voting system. Now, for that voting system, one of my developer have already created a website for that voting system. Through that website, whoever living in the area under the government, they were vote through that website. Now they given me the cloud related issue for me. That is the cloud related management for me. Now I need to manage the backend cloud for that website coming data. Now I want to store that data, right? Yeah. So where do I can able to store that coming data? So for this, the answer is Amazon DynamoDB. Why we choose this Amazon DynamoDB to store my votes, sir? Because this DynamoDB can able to store schemaless data. That is, if my voter will enter some more new columns, that is some more facilities that he want to address, other facilities he want to address, then to store that column as well and to manage that data, to store unlimited amount of data, this DynamoDB is good fit for our database backend, right? Yeah. Now we need to capture new changes, right? That is whenever, let's say one user put some data into it. Now at that moment of time, I calculated the result and then also I need to store the result, right? Yeah. So for storing the result also, I'm using one more DynamoDB table. Let's make it clear. Which data I want to store initially? I want to store initially whatever the votes data that I got. Then at final, at result, what I want to store? I want to store total votes related data, right? Yeah. So this is a total votes related table data. Whereas this firstly stored data is votes table data. So first I will store votes table data. Then at last I need to store total votes table related data. So in between I need to process the data, right? Yeah. So by using what we can able to process the data. To process the data, to process this votes data and calculate the total number of votes, or to compute this whole table data and find the total votes that comes to which region and which area. So that you can calculate, you need to have some processing, right? Yeah. So that you can able to do by using this serverless compute service, that is Lambda. So for this, you don't even need to manage the underlying infrastructure like servers for it. So it makes me easy that task, right? Yeah. Now let's have a question. Now I have 1,000 users or 1,000 people in the locality. Now those all 1,000 people voted one person one time, one person one time, like that 1,000 times they voted their vote. Now at that moment what happens? So at the first time, when first person votes into it, then that total will be calculated and that will be stored here. So at the second time, second person voted into it. So at the second time, what happens? The two users data will be taken by using this Lambda function and that will be calculated and stored in this DynamoDB, right? Yeah. So at third time, what happens? Third user data is stored and three users data will be taken by using this Lambda function that will be processed and the result will be stored in this DynamoDB, right? Yeah. So at this time, what happens? we are processing whole data again and again, right? Yeah. So may takes you a lot of compute, right? Yeah. So I want to reduce that compute by only taking whatever the latest updated data. How to pick that latest updated? To pick only new objects which are present in which we put in this DynamoDB table, we create this DynamoDB streams. What we create? We create DynamoDB streams for this DynamoDB table. So at that time, what happens is whenever we put a new object, that is whenever a new voter uploaded or put his vote in this DynamoDB table, then since that's a new object, this DynamoDB stream will be created, updated for us. So whenever it is updated, we are going to invoke this Lambda function. Then this Lambda function will process that only data, that only new object uploaded, instead of processing whole data which is present in this DynamoDB. It will reduce the cost for me since we are processing only newly updated data instead of whole data present in DynamoDB. Then after it will find the result. It will compute the result. So then after we will store the result in our final destination. What is that? DynamoDB table. That is total votes DynamoDB table. So now we're gonna implement this whole end-to-end project in this lab, right? Yeah. Now let us implement this whole project hands-on. So for this, first what we need to do, we need to create a storage table. That is a storage table for storing my votes, right? Yeah. So let us create this at first from AWS Management Console. So for this, I have already logged into my AWS Management Console. Now I'm searching for DynamoDB. So since I have previously opened, that is visible here. So for you, I'm searching for DynamoDB. So that is visible here. Now I'm just opening it. So under this, we have tables option that is visible here. Now I'm just clicking there to create my own table. So currently it does not have any table. So that's why you have no tables in this account in this region is visible to me. Now I'm just clicking on create table. So remember one more point, you need to do creating this table in the same region where you are. So if you do like that, then it will be easy to access for you. Now I'm just creating the table. So for this table, I need to provide the table name. Since I'm creating it for votes, I'm providing the name as votes. So what is the partition key? This partition key is used to partition your whole data. For every voter in my constituency have their own particular ID. So based on the ID, I want to partition the whole data. So that's why I provided ID as my partition key, right? Yeah. Now let's move it up to configure other configuration. So table settings, if you want to move on with the default configuration or customized settings, currently I want to move on with default configurations. So that's why I'm not changing anything here. Now under tags, so currently I don't need, so I am not providing any tags. You can able to click on create to create your table. Here we provided only votes and partition key as ID. That's it. We are just creating our table with the default details. Now you can see my table is creating, right? Yeah. So in this table, actually I want to store my data. After creating this table, you can able to enable that DynamoDB stream for this table. Now I'm just reloading it. It's still, yeah, you can see now it's created and this table is now active, right? Now I'm opening this table to create my DynamoDB streams. You can see here exports and streams. Just click on it so that it will provide you that DynamoDB stream details. You can see that is visible here. DynamoDB stream details. Currently it is in off mode. Now I need to turn it on. So why I am turning it on? In order to get only new objects which are uploaded to my table, right? Yeah. So that's what I am configuring. You can see DynamoDB stream details. That is, I'm taking the view type as a new image. The entire item as it appears after it was changed. So that's what I selected. Now I'm creating or turning on my stream. Now you also got a message that is successfully turned on stream on DynamoDB streams. And you can see that this DynamoDB stream details. Under this DynamoDB stream details, that latest stream ARN is visible, as well as this DynamoDB stream status. You can check it is in on mode. Previously there is no triggers available, so currently it is there, triggers available, right? Yes. You can see the view type of our DynamoDB stream as well, that is a new image. Now let's move back to our architecture. We have created a DynamoDB to store our votes. We also created this DynamoDB streams to pick only the new objects. After that, what I need a Lambda function, right? In order to process or compute the result, we need a Lambda function, right? Yeah. So that's what we're gonna create now. Now I'm just searching for Lambda. Now I'm opening it in a new tab. Now let's provide whatever the Lambda function code that we require here by creating a new function. So now I'm just going into functions. Here you can see there is no functions are available. Now I'm just expecting to create it. So that's why I clicked on create function. Now for this lab, we have three ways to create. We have these three options to create our Lambda function. So previously, in previous videos, I have already shown you how to create your Lambda function from scratch, right? Yeah. So for this video, I want to show you other option, that is use a blueprint in order to understand another options. Also, I want to show you this option. By using blueprint, I want to show you how to create your Lambda function. So you need to select the blueprint here. So currently I want a Python related blueprint, that is to create a DynamoDB. Since I'm creating it for DynamoDB, I want a Python related DynamoDB event related streams. So since it's related to DynamoDB streams, I'm choosing with these two, any one. Since I need this Python version, I'm choosing this. Now we need to provide the function name. So for this lab, I'm providing the function name as f1. And since I need to create this Lambda function, we need permission, right? Yeah. I already provided that permission to already available existing IAM role that I want to select here. You can see that I have selected here. You can even click here to see whatever the permissions that I have provided to that DynamoDB role. You can see we just came to this role. Then you can click on plus to see whatever the permissions that you provided. You provided the actions to CloudWatch, DynamoDB, as well as the logs, right? Yeah. So for all those resources, we provided the permissions. Now I'm just moving back. I provided the existing role and I'm moving on with the default code that is provided. And now I want to provide my DynamoDB trigger, right? Yeah. So which table I want to trigger. So whenever I updated a new vote into a table, that a table need to which table need to trigger this Lambda function that I am going to create. Votes table, right? So that's why I'm selecting my DynamoDB table as votes. So whenever we update or whenever we put a new item or new vote into this table, this will trigger. By using this DynamoDB trigger, it will trigger whatever the Lambda function that we are going to create now. And batch window, I'm providing it as 1. Additional configurations currently not required. So for you, I'm just showing it. And now I'm just clicking on create function. Before clicking on create, I want to show you what we did. We are just using a blueprint to create this, and we are moving on with the latest blueprint of DynamoDB Streams, that is this of Python version, and function is F1. We used execution role to execute the or to process the data. We need some execution role that we provided by using this. Then we are moving on with the code that is generated by using automatically generated, and we are triggering whatever the function that we are creating by using this DynamoDB triggers by selecting that particular table. And that's it. We are just clicking on create function so that this Lambda function will create now for me. So let's see whether it got created or not. Yeah, you can see a message that is congrats. Your Lambda function F1 has successfully created and configured with votes as triggers. You can see that trigger is also added. You just click on it so that you can able to see under configurations tab trigger related details. Those all visible here, right? Yeah. Now I want to see the code and update the code. So let's move back to our architecture and let's see till which step we have done. In previously we have created our DynamoDB and for that DynamoDB table votes. We have created our streams as well. Then we created our Lambda function. We have even triggered this Lambda function by using this DynamoDB table. Now we need to process the latest data that this Lambda function will receive, right? Yeah. To process that data, we need some code right here. Yeah. So that I wanna paste here right now. So for this, I have already written some code that I've pasted here. Now you can see I just imported Boto3. In order to communicate with the DynamoDB, we need a library that is a Boto3. By using that Boto3, I've connected to my DynamoDB. Then after connecting to my DynamoDB, what I did, I just received the event that is a new data, right? That event I received and that event related ID and name I'm printing, and I'm checking the details of the record pattern. You can see, so whenever this line got executed, this record got passed to this function check record pattern. So that will reach here and it will check a few things like whether my record contains DynamoDB or not, and my record of that DynamoDB, that is my record of that DynamoDB will contain this new image object or not. So actually it's a JSON script, right? So that's why we are checking like this. So if my record contains DynamoDB and inside the DynamoDB, if I have this new image, then I'm storing that new image in this new image variable. So then after again I'm comparing, again I'm checking this improvement is present in my new image or not. So if this improvement is present and the region is provided, so what improvement we want that is present or not, we are checking. Then in which region of my locality the people are expecting this improvement, that is present or not, I'm checking here. So if the both are present, then I'm checking for S, which is present in my improvement. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. So if S is there, then they're expecting to improve. And in new region also, they are providing the data as a string type. Then I'm considering that whatever the votes they provided, that is valid. That is, they provided the what improvement they want and what in what region my voter is expecting the improvement. So since those two provided by the voter, I considering that as a true. That is, they are expecting to improve. So otherwise, if they haven't provided any one of the detail, that is, they provided improvement but not provided this region, or they provided the region but they not provided the improvement, then I'm just neglecting that vote by returning false. If improvement and region are provided, then I'm returning what? True as my return from this function. So whenever if they provided two, that is my improvement as well as a region, then I need to store that data, right? Yeah. So that improvement I stored in this variable and that region I stored in this variable. So after that, I printed that data. To see that data, I printed that data, and at last you can see I need to store that data in my total votes table, that is the resultant table, right? So do you created, let's have a question, do we created that resultant tables data? No, we haven't created this total votes related DynamoDB table. We're gonna create it now. To store our result, we're gonna create it now. So whenever I got the improvement as well as my region, I need to store my result, right? So for storing also, I have written this code. I'm opening this table. What is that? Total votes. That we're gonna create now. I'm just copying this total votes name. Then after you can see table dot update item. That is, we are updating the item with this key as well as this region based on this key and region. So based on this improvement and region, we are updating our whole table, and we are adding the total votes as the vote value, and we are providing that value as 1. So that's it. So based on improvement and region, the my voter provided, so that table value I'm adding to the total votes, and I'm adding 1. So whenever one vote came for that region and particular improvement, so that's what we are going to do. And we simply returning successfully proceeded record, and that record related length I have provided here. Now I'm just saving this code. Now in order to store my result inside this table, first we need to create this DynamoDB table, right? Yes. So I'm just moving back to my DynamoDB, and now I'm just moving back to the tables. So here in this tables, I have votes tables in order to store my votes which are voted by my voters. Then after to store my result, I need to create a table. So that's why I clicked on create table. Here I'm providing my table name, that is total votes. Then what is my partition key here? My partition key here is, you can see under my Lambda function, I have provided my keys. That is improvement is my partition key that I'm providing inside my Lambda, that is a DynamoDB table. And even I have provided this sort key as well. So what improvement my voters expecting, and in which region my voters is expecting that improvement. So that also I'm copying from here to paste that there in my DynamoDB. They both are of string type. So that's why I mentioned the type as a string. So even you can see in my Lambda function, I considered them as string. You can see, yes, I commented it as yes. That means string type, those two are. Now I need to create this table. So for this also, I'm just moving on with the default options, and I'm just clicking on create table. You can see it is creating. So let's wait for a second to make it created. Yeah, you can see the table is active. That means it created successfully and now it is active. So let's move back to our architecture and let's see what we did. We have created a DynamoDB table, that is votes, to store my votes data from my voters in my constancy. Then after each and every new image that voter will put into this DynamoDB table, in order to compute the total result from that data, I'm just picking only the new objects that voters will put into this DynamoDB table by using what? DynamoDB Streams. So then after, what we are doing, we are processing by using what? We are processing by using Lambda function. We are processing that data. Then at last, where we are storing that total votes related data related to our improvement and region. Here in this DynamoDB table, that is a total votes table, we are storing that data, right? Yeah. So we created this whole architecture in our lab. Now what we left with? We left with checking whether this architecture is working correctly or not. That we need to check at last. So how do we check, sir? Simple, very simple. We just put some data into this DynamoDB table and we will check, do we got that improvement and region in this last result table or not. So that's it. So for this, to checking this, I'm just opening my votes table to put some data into this votes. So in order to put some votes data into this votes, I'm just exploring this table items. Now you can see currently it has no table items in this table, that is votes. Now I am expecting to create an item in it. So I just clicked on create item. Now I'm moving on with the JSON view. Here I want to put some item. I'm just moving on with the old, that is this easy syntax to write this JSON related data. Here I need to provide three things, that is ID, improvement and region. You can see I've provided those three details here, that is ID I've provided, improvement I have written, and region also I've provided in JSON format. Now I'm saving this. So in order to create this item, you have an option, that is a create item. You can say I'm just clicking on create item. Now this item will be created, right? Yeah, this item will be created under where? Under my votes table. Now let's move back to our architecture and let's see. So since a new item that we put into this DynamoDB table, where it will update, this will leads to create this DynamoDB stream, and that leads to trigger this Lambda function. This Lambda function need to process and provide the total result to where? To this total tables, total votes table. So I'm just moving back to this total votes to check whether I got the result or not. I'm just clicking here. You can see we're getting fetching the data. You can see whatever the vote that we provided, that is visible here, right? Yeah. So I want to see by providing one more item here to this votes. I am clicking on create item. Again, I'm just moving on with the JSON view, and here I'm providing one more time a new data or the same. Now also I'm providing the same data, but I'm providing the different ID because this ID is a partition key. Since I need to provide different ID, since every user do not have the same ID, right? Yeah, so no two users can have same ID in reality as well. So that's why I provided this ID as a partition key. Now I'm just clicking on create this item as well. Now this item also got created, right? Yeah. So let's move back to our total votes table and see the result. Now I'm just reloading it again. Now you can see total votes changed to 2. That means it is updated successfully. We are calculating the improvement, the my voters are expecting, in which region they are expecting, and how many votes are expecting, or how many votes are expecting that improvement. That is clearly visible here, right? Yeah. So that means our Lambda function is working, and for storing our votes, this votes table is working for storing our result. This total votes table is also working. You can see under this votes table. Now I selected this votes and now I'm clicking on view table details. Here for this table details, you can even see that table related matrices, right? Yeah. And here I'm moving on with the exports and streams. Now you can see the stream as well as the trigger that we provided, that Lambda function trigger that we provided, that is visible here. Now I'm just opening my Lambda function to show you this Lambda function previously deployed code. So this is what the code that we previously provided for this Lambda function. You can see, yeah, that is visible here. Here we just picked whatever the item or new data event that is put into our DynamoDB by triggering this Lambda function. So if we trigger this Lambda function, we got an event automatically. From that event, I am checking and validating that event having the two details, that is improvement as well as region or not. If they are present, then what I'm doing, I'm printing that vote, and finally I'm updating that vote at where? In my results table, that is total votes. That's it. Even we can monitor, we can open the monitor tab to see whether this Lambda function is working or not. You can see this Lambda function is working, so that's why invocations are available here, right? Yeah. So that's it about this lab. We have created, or we have managed successfully the voting management in our area. So in this way, you can able to effectively store your data in the DynamoDB table and process only the latest updated image or object by using this Lambda function, and store the results in your DynamoDB table again, and you can even see the results as well. So in this way, you can able to manage your votes management in your area. I hope you understood the need of this DynamoDB streams in real time, and DynamoDB need in real time, and Lambda need in real time. I hope this video is useful to you. If you feel this video is useful, then please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get the latest updates. Thanks for watching again. See you back in the next video. Until then, bye bye guys.